small enough room, so I think my voice will carry, and hopefully I can teach you all how to carry your own voices today too. So in starting today, my hope is to share with you the two aspects of voice that we all have. And first, you are your voice, and that is more the external, physical, real-time quality of your voice. And secondly, the journey toward finding your inner voice, and that is more the internal, more hidden, quiet aspect of our voice. And your voice right now, as it is, as we speak, tells us a lot about who you are. But there's also a deeper voice, a voice that's more on the interior that we all have as well, and I hope that we will be able to learn to access that and to fully express that as well. So my goal is to help you understand the mechanisms of the physical aspect of the voice, and then access our inner voice, integrate the two, and then bring healing to both ourselves and to others. So a little bit about my background. I'm the youngest of three in a very boisterous, outgoing family. And I felt I needed to be quite loud, or maybe I just came in that way, I'm not sure. But in order to be heard in my family, I was very loud. And I was also involved in school choirs, school theater, and I was a wannabe cheerleader. I was always cheering on the sidelines at all the middle school and high school events. And by the age of 14, I became very, very hoarse. And our family physician recommended that I be seen by an ear, nose, and throat doctor, who diagnosed me with bilateral vocal nodules. For those of you who may not know what that is, it's just calluses on the vocal folds due to trauma, abuse, misuse of the voice, where there's two vocal folds, you're beating too hard from being too loud, and you develop little calluses. So did we do anything with that information? No. I didn't have surgery, I didn't have treatment. I just went on, and in my later teenage years, I continued to become more hoarse, and I actually thought I sounded pretty sexy. But others informed me that I sounded quite frog-like. I was frequently being asked if I was tired, just waking up, if I was sick, if I had a cold. So it wasn't until I got into graduate school and studying as a speech pathologist that one of my professors said to me, you either need to change your voice or change your career. So I got serious about working on my voice, and I received voice therapy. And that's where I began certainly understanding the physical aspect of my voice. But I also understood that healing my external voice requires an internal journey. And then in my career path, which is about 35 years as a speech pathologist, my specialty was with head and neck cancer and with voice patients. And my process with these voice patients was, they gave me such a gift by taking that journey with me to learn about the inner aspect of our voice, not just the external, but the inner aspect of voice, to bring healing, as I mentioned, to ourselves and to others. So we've all heard that our eyes are the windows to our soul, right? Well, I believe that our voices are the windows just opening up, allowing the sound of our soul to come forth and be fully expressed. So let's do a little bit, we talked about the external voice. Let's talk about what it requires to have voice. Breath is imperative, not just to keep us alive, but in order to voice, you have to breathe. You cannot have any voice without breath flowing through those vocal folds. So I want you to do a little thing with me. We're going to have it interactive. Can you hear me if I step away from that? I'm still loud from my childhood. So I want everybody to put one hand on their chest and one hand on their belly. And I want you to take in a nice deep breath. Good. Great. Okay, now this time, when you take in another breath, I want you to recognize what your stomach's doing when you inhale. Okay, just be aware of that. All right, so now with the show of hands, how many people's stomach went in when they took in their breath? All right, a couple of you, 3 of you, 4 of you, and 5 of you. How many of your stomachs went out as you took in your breath? Okay, so maybe a little bit more on the out. So what is accurate here is that we all have a diaphragm, right? And when we inhale, the diaphragm drops and the stomach expands. That's what's supposed to happen. Our lungs fill and our stomach expands with air like a balloon. And then when we exhale, the belly button's supposed to go toward your spine, push that airflow up to set the vocal folds into vibration. But we tend to do things backwards. A lot of us, when we inhale, we go, we suck in the air through and bring our bellies in. So first criteria is knowing how to use your breath in order to relax, breathe, but do it anatomically accurate. So when you inhale, belly goes out. When you exhale, belly goes in. Okay? So what's also involved in voice production? We talked about the respiration, the power source, that's where we generate air from. We need that to produce voice. The second is the vibrator, or our larynx, our vocal folds. So everybody just put your hand on your throat and just say, ah. You feel the vibration?
Yeah.
All right, those are just vocal folds in there vibrating. So we need the vibrator. That's what gives us sound, right? So it's the air coming through, the vocal folds vibrating, giving us sound. And then we have the resonator, which is how we shape that sound into speech. So it's our lips, our tongue, and all these sinus cavities that give us the resonating features for voice production. So let me ask you this. Well, this is a science tidbit for any of you who like to watch Jeopardy. And if there's speech pathologists in the room, don't speak up. But who knows there are only 3 sounds in the English language that come through our nose. All the other speech sounds come out of our mouth. Who knows what those 3 speech sounds are? Anybody have an idea? Well, they are M, N, and I-N-G, ing. They come out of our nose. And does anybody know the little structure that allows that sound to come through the nose and not go orally?
Is it the septum?
No, it is the velum or your uvula, that little thing that hangs down in the back of your mouth. So that when we go to produce speech sounds, most of our speech sounds, that velum elevates, blocks off the nasal cavity, and then we can produce p, t, all those sounds that come out of our mouth. But cleft palate, where the uvula is not formed properly, that's why they sound like air coming through, you lose air through your nose, right? But in a normal structure, it drops for the sounds M, N, and ing. That's just for Jeopardy. That's just a fun little tidbit. So we need these 3 features to produce voice. We need the power source, we need our lungs, we need the respirator, we need the vibrator, the larynx, the vocal folds, and we need the resonators. But one aspect that isn't on here, we cannot forget, is the solarator. And that's where we take that inner journey to identify with our inner voice so that we can produce greater ease and more healing with our voice. So this is just normal vocal folds. This is what they look like. This is when they're open, right here. And then when we go to voice, they come together and vibrate. Does anybody else know when the vocal folds might also come together? What other reason they come together?
When you're carrying something, picking something up.
Very good. So when we bear down at the level of our vocal folds. So to lift something heavy, we have to bear down and the vocal folds come together so we can build up enough air pressure to lift. Where do we hold our breath from? The level of the vocal folds. You want to try that for a moment? Just go, those are the vocal folds closing so no air escapes. Never thought about that before. Also, when we swallow, we hope those vocal folds are going to close. Otherwise, we lose food down the wrong track. Our vocal folds, you can see the maybe not as well on that, but there, you can see the rings of the trachea. They're right below those levels of the vocal folds. So that's a normal situation. And this is just a video of vocal folds in vibration.
During a stroboscopic exam.
So this is a female voice box. Low pitch, the vocal folds shorten. Get nice contact. It looks like our voicing and our timing is not quite in sync here. And a little bit of mucus on the vocal folds. I would tell this person to drink more water so that mucus isn't so built up. Alright, so you have the idea there, right? Okay. This was me. This isn't my video or my slide, but these are abnormal vocal folds. This is vocal nodules. Two calluses opposing each other from banging together too much, from being too loud as a kid, or my cheerleader days, or wannabe cheerleader days. And when they come together, you can see there's air gaps. So that would create the hoarse voice. Now there's many other reasons for having a hoarse voice, but it's beyond the scope of our talk today, but this is just one of them, which is vocal nodules, which is what I have. So our voice changes with age. When you're an infant and into toddlerhood, the voice is about the same in pitch. If you didn't see a child, you wouldn't know if it was male or female. It's at about, they vibrate at about 250 cycles per second, which is really just a middle C on the piano. All right, so that's the childhood. And then, that is actually my son. During adolescence, the male larynx doubles in size, so grows quite a lot. And that's why he had, and many other males, have a lot of voice pitch breaks. You hear as they're going through their adolescent change, the voice, it can't keep up with itself. It grows so rapidly that the muscles haven't had a chance to adapt yet. So that's typical, normal development of external voice issues. And that is me with my beautiful 92-year-old mother-in-law. And I love my mother-in-law. And as we age, our muscles tend to, unfortunately, atrophy, right? They get a little bit floppy, and it affects the vocal folds as well. But the good news is there are exercises also that we can do with the voice to strengthen that floppiness so that you don't have to sound old. You can still sound very youthful and be 92 years old, as she does, actually. I couldn't leave the rest of my family out. This is my beautiful two sons and my husband, and I want you to know that they are all 6 feet and above. And you can see me here. I am definitely standing on a very large rock. And this, whoops, that's the other member of our family. That is Ziggy, our sweet dog, when we were hiking in Flagstaff on a hot day. It was too hot on his pads, and he refused to continue on. So we had to put him in a friend's backpack and carry on down the rest of the hour and a half down the trail. I think he was quite happy, actually. Never heard a beep out of him.
Thank you for considering me for this.
Sorry, that was a little ahead of itself. So there is no hiding it. We are our voices. And people form judgments based on how we sound. They form judgments based on how we dress, what we choose to wear, all kinds of judgments are formed, but our voice is just another aspect of how people form opinions about us. And we can also read emotions through our voices. Can't tell through texting, but if you call a friend and you hear their voice, you either know they're feeling joyful or something's not right. They're nervous. I think my voice might have been a little shaky when we first started out. A little bit of nervousness in the voice. You can hear that in people. So our emotions are revealed through our voice. And I have some fun stories from, I think they're fun, but I had a patient who was graduated top of her class in law school, very sharp gal, and really quite attractive. Her resume was very impressive, but she couldn't get a job. And a friend of hers actually referred her to me. She walks into my office, and because she couldn't figure out why she couldn't get hired. Resume was gorgeous. She walks in this beautiful power suit, a very attractive woman, and as soon as she opened up her mouth, I understood why she couldn't get hired. She sounded very much like this. Oh, I just don't understand why I'm not getting hired. Very high-pitched. Really, it just didn't sync with the resume and the power suit. The voice didn't correlate. Very weak-sounding voice, and it doesn't give the impression of somebody who has that kind of resume. I had another patient who was a professor here. She's since long gone to another state, so I won't be revealing anybody's identity, but she was in the astronomy department, and she had actually a polyp on her vocal fold, so she developed a pathology due to the fact that because she was working in an all-male profession, at least at that time it was, she felt that she had to lower the pitch of her voice purposefully to sound as authoritative and dominant in her field. And by lowering her voice on a regular basis, she became fatigued. By the end of the day, she could no longer lecture, and she developed a pathology. So it was in working with healing the external voice that we began that journey of going inward and recognizing aspects that were important to overall healing. Confidence, all those other types of things that we'll talk about later. There's also some new trends in voice that I'm not sure I particularly like, and it's called vocal fry. And what it is where it almost sounds like something's frying in the vocal cords. And I have a small recording of it.
Thank you for considering me for this opportunity.
Thank you for considering me for this opportunity.
So I don't know if you hear that in some people's voices. It sounds like they're just hanging in the low end. You know, it's kind of hip. I don't like it, but it's a trend in voice. I feel like I want to tell them to clear your throat. But so there's lots of different things that come with the voice, is really my point here. So, question to you, how do you want to be perceived? Do you want to be perceived as aggressive, dominant, loud, soft-spoken, demure? What other adjectives can you think of that might be a label that people use based on just the voice alone?
Scared.
Scared? As a person who's scared? Mm-hmm.
Charming. Authoritative.
Authoritative?
Confident.
Confident, yeah.
Charming.
Charming. Love that.
Caring.
Caring.
I
Yeah.
haven't shouted out, sorry, I'm like raising my hand. I think what your example sounded like to me is people can sound immature or undereducated without even really.
Right. So we do form opinions on our voice. So what do? How do we make some changes? Well, first, you got to become aware that you're even, there might be a voice issue, right? So we have to start listening into ourselves. What you're putting on for the day, you know, what earrings, sorry gentlemen, or maybe you guys are choosing out your earrings as well, but what you wear for the day. You got to think about how you sound for the day, how you're coming across. And one good way to do that is to listen to your voice objectively and listen to it on a recording. Now, most of us don't like how we sound when we hear our voice in a recording, but I will guarantee you that that is how everybody else hears you. So when we hear ourselves, we are listening to our own voices as we vibrate through our own body tissue, right? But as others hear us, our voice goes through a medium of air into their ear, and that's how they hear us. So when you hear yourself on a recording, it's passing through a medium of air into your own ear, and that's how you actually sound. So I would advise you to listen to a recording that you have of your voice, one that you've left on your phone machine or for a friend or something. And there's even apps for doing that on your phone now too. Listen to it, pretend like it's not you, and critically assess if that's the voice that you like. You know, is that how you want to be perceived? So that's how we first start. This is all the external voice, remember? And very briefly, these are some exercises that we do to help with the external voice. There's 3 aspects to good voicing. We have to have good breath support, right? We talked about breath before. It's a lifelong friend. We have to have good placement of the voice, and by placement, that is up here in our head register. And we have to have appropriate pitch. So breath support's important. And you can do breathing exercises to identify this that we talked about before. The placement, let's just all try and make this sound right now together. Just go, Can you, oh my gosh, we could start a choir, that's beautiful. Can you feel the vibration around your lips? And try that again. Do you feel the vibration? Oh my gosh, you guys are sounding beautiful. You're a wonderful group. Do you feel that vibration? So that's where our voice needs to be placed. If we're too much in that lower throat, that's where we get problems, where the energy is held too low in our throats. So we want to lift that voice, and you can do that by just going, yeah, 1, 2, 3, and practicing the placement of your voice. We use for pitch identification, when you actually say in a natural environment, when it's not contrived, when you say yeah, that's your natural pitch. So you can find your natural pitch that way, but and then you can try to match it. 1, yeah. So bringing the voice forward, using a buzz is just another way for placement. It's another way to relax things too, because tension certainly creates problems in our voice. We use a flow technique, and that's making sure that the air flow is free and released. How beautiful. So very easy, very open, very relaxed sounding voicing. And we also use trills. Now, not everybody can do this, but you can just feel how it oscillates your larynx, your voice box. Or you can do it with your lips. And then, beautiful. I know we have a singer in the group. And then we had talked about as our vocal folds age, or as things start to atrophy in there are strengthening exercises that we can use for the atrophying, the kind of the bowing of the vocal folds, or if somebody had a unilateral vocal fold paralysis, we use strengthening exercises like or hey, but certainly wouldn't want to do that if you have nodules, because that's too much contact. But that, kind of in a nutshell, are some of the exercises that we can do to help with the external voice. And my goal for the physical aspect of the voice is, wouldn't it be wonderful if somebody just said to you, keep talking because I love the sound of your voice. I love hearing your voice. It's just, what a great energy to have. It's beautiful. So that's the goal, is to have a beautiful, clear sounding voice. So now we go to the next section. finding our inner voice. Now that I hope in a very short period of time, I gave you an understanding of how to have a more healthy sounding voice, to understand the more physical aspect of the voice, we can now begin that journey of finding our inner voice and bringing more healing to ourselves as well as to others. So how do we find our inner voices? First, we need to get quiet. We need to be able to hear that inner voice. And when you find that inner voice, you begin to find the soul of your voice. And as you find the soul of your voice, you're able to express the beauty that is within you. And the world is a very loud, noisy place. And we tend to listen to everything outside of us, to every person, to every craziness that's out there. And my hope is that we begin to learn to listen to our inner selves versus everything else outside of us. And Leon Brown, who's a minister, has some great books and beautiful quotes, and this is one of his that I think is very relevant to what we're speaking about. And he says, listen to your own voice, your own soul, because too many people listen to the noise of the world instead of themselves. You need to recognize that you are more than the role that you play. You are more than a mother, more than a father, more than a sister, a brother, a friend, a nurse, a colleague. That's just one aspect of who you are. And as you recognize that the messages that you've been given from childhood, of how you're supposed to be, how our social norms have told us how to act, you can start to create the self that you want to be. I think back to that female attorney that I saw, and her voice was so childlike. And the messages, that eventually she conveyed to me was that was her role in her home. And she hadn't gone beyond that childlike person. So you get to discover yourself. We're not imitating another, we're creating our own authentic selves and working with that. And it is a lifelong journey. This doesn't happen overnight, but it's something that will take a life, I say many lifetimes, but that's just what I like to say. And the other thing I want you to think about is that, I have to go back to my notes here. So we don't want to imitate another. And we recognize that our voice mediates our emotions. So as we start to become aware, we begin to take that journey of looking inward. This is Zen Master Dojin said, do not follow the idea of others, but learn to listen to the voice within yourself. And James Earl Jones, our beautiful voicing actor, said one of the hardest things in life is having words in your heart that you can't utter. So I am encouraging you to release your voice, but that helps rid tension and stress. But this isn't about letting it all out and lambasting others with your beliefs and your ideas and your righteousness. And you may feel very justified and very right in your position, but just don't do it with negativity. When we speak, when we voice with negativity, our voice tightens. We get constricted. The stress is evident. But when we voice with a concept of compassion, of love, of goodness, our voice carries that vibration. And that's where we begin to bring healing, not just to ourselves, but to others. So how do we cultivate our inner voice? We talked about breath work. right? We all know how to take that breath in. That helps us stay alive, right? Does anybody know the Latin word for breath? It's spirit. So in spiritu. Isn't that pretty? When you inhale, when you inspire, you're bringing in spirit. So that's, talk about a whole different energy around breath. So we need to become, I want you to become curious about your breath. I want you to become more aware of when you breathe. So let's just take a breath again. And just be aware of how it passes through your nasal passages into your belly. Let's just take that breath. Beautiful. Okay, we're going to ratchet it up here a bit. I want you now to take in a loving breath. I want you to take in a breath from your heart center. This is an intellectual. Beautiful. I sure felt the room shift. Thank you for that gift. That's beautiful. So we work with our breath to help us find our inner voice. Meditation. It's a good process. Doesn't mean that you have to cross your legs and sit on the floor for an hour and a half and meditate. You can be doing this. Meditation is just listening in. There are many different styles and forms of meditation, but you can be meditating while you're working with a patient, while you're washing instruments, while you're doing the laundry, while you're driving home. Just don't run any red lights. The practice of mindfulness is also wonderful, and mindfulness is just being aware in the moment, right now, without judgment, with kindness and curiosity. That's all mindfulness is. And they've done phenomenal research now in the study of mindfulness that through the practice of mindfulness, it actually shuts down it deactivates stress chemicals in the brain when we practice mindfulness. So that's another good technique. And releasing tension. You know, we can just jump up and down to help release and relax the voice. But to go more inward, there's a vocal release exercise. And this is done by Arthur Joseph. He has a PhD in voice and music, psychology, and philosophy. He's a phenomenal, interesting person. He works a lot with singers and actors. But his prescription pad, he writes on it, cry. When you think about emotion and crying, where do we feel that from? When you stop your cry in midstream, where do you feel it?
Throat.
The throat. What happens to our voice? It's so tight. Everything tightens up, and many of us say, oh, I'm fine, right? Our muscles have memory. It holds that tension. So that's why, and I too have written a prescription to many patients to cry. Release that, go watch a sad movie. You know, whatever you need to do. For some of us, all we need to do is snap our fingers and it's there. Just release that emotional tension. Another exercise that Arthur Joseph uses is called the vocal release exercise. And I will demonstrate it here. If you want to join me, that's fine, but it's a little big of an exercise. He recommends fully releasing your voice with full freedom, no concerns about quality, but full release 5 times in a row, and then to actually journal what might be coming up for you. And it sounds something like this. And by the 5th time, I can get pretty big with that. And you never know what's going to come out. That's an exercise. Then I have warm your heart exercises. And the reason why I have warming your heart exercises is because when we get quiet, darkness tends to come in. We are so pre-wired to negativity and judgment and criticism that we have to do something else to block out the darkness. So we have to cultivate warming the heart. And these are some suggestions that I have for doing that. First one is, I call it my top 10 love list. Writing 5 people down on your list that are easy to love. Could be your dog. And then writing 5 people on your list that are a little bit of a challenge for you. And then sitting and sending them love. It'll warm your heart. Second is gratitude. Now, it's easy for us to practice gratitude for things that are easy, that are given, right? That make us joyful. And it's good to remind ourselves of those things that bring us joy. So practicing gratitude for that is definitely helpful. But I'm going to ratchet it up a bit here. I want you to practice gratitude for those things that are more challenging for you. Perhaps you're having a problem with your coworker, your boss, your spouse, a good friend. Gratitude. So doing something like, I am grateful for blank because blank. And your because may be, I am grateful for this horrible situation because it's teaching me patience. It's teaching me to understand compassion. Whatever it is, okay? That's the practice of gratitude. Forgiveness is not about the other person. Forgiveness is about releasing your negative attachment to the situation and the experience. So it has nothing to do with the other person. It's for you to release your heart from that negative hold. So it'll free you to move beyond. And then very quickly, I'm going to teach you a technique called retrospective writing, because I find it to be an amazing technique. This goes way back thousands of years to Pythagoras. The retrospective writing is where you have a situation that you didn't like, right? An encounter that didn't go well. I want you to report it, like just as if you're a reporter. You write that down exactly as it happened. I did this, they did this, I said this, they said that. No judgment, you're just writing it like a reporter. Draw a big dark line underneath it, signifying it occurred in the past. We don't want to hold on to that. And then sit and meditate on how your higher self, how you might have responded differently. And then rewrite that script. It's part of like neuro-linguistic programming. So it's a quick ideas here, but they're great techniques to follow. Oh, we'll get back to that. So for many of us, it is hard to warm our hearts. We've had situations that have been so painful, we don't feel that love. It just doesn't come to us. So my suggestion is to think of something that does. When we see a beautiful, healthy baby, it immediately warms our heart, right? We see little baby animals with unlikely friendships that our heart is instantly warmed. So if you can't drum it up elsewhere, find another technique to get your heart fired up so that you can begin to listen to that inner voice, the solarator that's inside. And this is where we begin to see that spark within others and ourselves. You know, I do believe that we are all here to be better people. We're trying to be better. We're trying to offer goodness to another. And in order to see the world in a more positive light, we want to work on seeing that spark, that light that is in another and in ourselves. And that will bring us healing to ourselves as well as others. That's when you can let your heart sing. And you can hear that song, your sweet voice, that sweet music that you can produce, and that vibration of your sound is sent out to others, and they will feel it. They will feel your soul. I was sharing this with my husband the other day as we were going through this talk, and he goes, well, that's why they named it soul music. Because soul music, you feel the soul of that sound. And you hear it in a performer as well. It's not just that they've hit the right pitches. You know a really good performer when they are in their soul releasing that sound forth. And that's where I challenge you to let out that beautiful sound that you all have within you. And we use imagery to help us, right? Some of those images that you just saw up there, and we can use more images. I love these images of the breath healing our planet, or one act of kindness saving our world. And it's done through use of our hands, it's done through intention, it's done through our healing words, it's done through our voice. We too can be a part of that healing of ourselves and others. So in summary, we are our external voices, right? We know that it's physically controlled. We know about breath support. We know about our placement, the pitch of our voice, and we know to listen to that external voice without judgment and decide what needs to be altered and changed. And then we also know that we are our internal voices, that it is heart-centered. And by getting quiet and listening to that inner voice, warming our hearts, quieting our critical voice, and getting in touch with our own light, our own love, our own wisdom, that's when we can begin the process of healing ourselves and healing others. And my hope with this talk is that you all allow your voice to bring out the beautiful, loving person that you are all meant to be. We have some time for questions.
Comments?
Yeah.
I was reading an article yesterday about the vagus nerve
Mm-hmm.
and how singing and humming can help activate the vagus nerve, which is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know anything?
I don't know the research on that, but I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not familiar
And I
with
guess the
research.
vagus nerve is what controls the parasympathetic
Yeah,
nervous system.
yeah. I don't know that research.
I don't
Anybody
know
else
much.
familiar with that?
Anyway, so I've been humming a lot.
Oh, lovely. That's beautiful.
And how does it make you feel, Kevin?
Great.
Great, so I couldn't believe it. She was talking about.
And if you hummed a song that you love
That's
or
right.
meaningful, then you get the imagery.
That's right.
Yeah.
Humming, I've been humming some Beatles songs.
I love that.
Oh, beautiful.
Well.
Yeah.
Absolutely beautiful. Yeah.
Additional questions or comments?
One of my favorite quotes is very similar to what you posted up there a moment ago. This is, see the light in others and treat them as if that's all you see. And I think I forget a lot of good quotes. I remember that one.
I actually have on the next slide, I didn't put it up there, but there are some other quotes related to voice that I found kind of interesting and fun, so I'll leave those up there for you to read.
I just recently talked to a very dear friend of mine about her voice on her. She got a new iPhone, and so she changed her voice message, and she sounded like she was waiting to be rescued. I know that's not the, and again, she's looking for new work or new love in her life, and that's not necessarily the image of whom she is moving into the future. So
Yeah.
just, like you said, with that curiosity, ask her to maybe, reflect on that a little.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If she's open to hearing that, certainly, yeah. Yeah.
I have this condition where I am more susceptible to respiratory infections. So over the last couple of years, I've had bronchitis, I've had pneumonia, I've had sinusitis, and my voice has changed. I am more hoarse, sound more hoarse than I was. My husband mentioned that to our doctor, and he didn't think anything of it.
Well, if you're coughing a lot,
Yes.
we cough from the vocal folds.
Oh.
So the sound of a cough are the vocal folds smacking together, right?
So would it be a good idea to have that looked at, or? I mean-
Certainly, I wouldn't stop you from doing it. I mean, if you are more hoarse, if you are hoarse for more than 10 days, we always recommend that you have that looked at by an ear, nose, and throat physician.
A
But
scratchier voice.
yeah, and that can come from redness. Also, reflux affects the voice too because it spills over onto the vocal folds and causes swelling. But we can teach coughing techniques, modified coughing techniques, so that we're not being so abusive to the vocal folds themselves. But it makes sense why you might be hoarse.
Yeah.
But we always want to rule out anything else going on, so I certainly wouldn't stop you from having that looked at.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, how does a deaf person react to this, to the voice? And my parents were deaf-mute, but I'm thinking about my parents, and they never used their voice, you know? They would make funny sounds, but never, but now it's different because deaf children are learned to speak, but I just wondered how that would
So,
react to
yeah.
a deaf person.
My thoughts on that are voice and is very different from speech. So your parents may not have spoken, but they did make
Right.
sound.
Right.
And sound is a very personal thing. It's still very internal. So, and I'm trying to think of the actress who really brought that to light.
Oh,
Marley.
Yeah.
Matlin, yes.
Yeah,
And
right.
she won an Academy Award
Yes.
for her performance. And boy, did she release that sound, that voice. So even though you may not hear there, and many deaf people, depending upon how deaf they are, still feel the vibration
Yes.
of their voice. They feel vibration of music, of any kind of sound. So,
Thank you.
yeah. And you had a question in the back too?
Oh, I was thinking how, you know, when somebody's in a bad mood, you can sense it, right? Like the flags are everywhere. And this morning I was singing as I was walking from my car to work, and usually I stop, and I didn't. And I kept on humming, and just kind of like there was this song just stuck in my head, and I was really having fun with it, and I would see people, and I'm like, do you know this song? And I'm like, oh yeah. And I was starting to watch those people around me that were reacting, like they would, you know, kind of smile a little. And I work on the 8th floor of UMC, and I hummed all the way up.
Oh, lovely.
And it was just so much fun. And it was contagious, even though like, these are people who never see me, and I don't know, you know, busy doctors or nurses going about their work or wanting to start the day or whatever. So it was really kind of funny, and I don't know if that fits into the inner voice, but it was this, like humming and singing. It was just like a gift.
Yeah,
You know? Like,
and a gift that you're offering
it was
to
fun.
yourself and to others. It's amazing how we can affect a space.
Yeah.
You know, and just when I felt everybody breathe and they took in that heart-centered breath, the room shifted. You know, you really feel that energy. So I thank you so much for your time.
So once again, I want to wish everyone a happy, healthy new year. I don't have our flyers for our